The conversation here on Lagos Television, commemorated every year between November 25 and December 10, is the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And the theme for this year is End Digital Violence Against All Women and Girls. Before we went on that break, I did say that now is the time to start talking about digital safety. And of course, being online shouldn't be a place where the rights of the girls or the women, even the boys, can be taken for a ride. Oftentimes, we tend to stay focused on the girls and leave the boys thinking that they also do not, get violated or get harassed. But we do know that more women or more girls tend to be harassed or violated. On the conversation this morning, we're glad to have join us the General Manager of the Lagos State Office for Disability Affairs, Adenike Oyetunde Lawal. Thank you for being on the program this morning.
Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Right, let's start from the theme of this year's celebration, and of course it will take us to the space where we all thought that the digital space should be a place where safety should be guaranteed, a place where you should be able to source for information and be glad that you are there. But it is becoming a place where rights had been violated, where a lot of things are being taken for granted. So how apt is the theme for this year's celebration?
I don't think that they would have chosen or agreed on a better theme, because it actually starts with to unite, to end. And without a doubt, there's a reason and a need for all parties to urgently work together.
Right.
I'll paint a simple picture for you. The conversation around what age is too early to give a child a mobile device, for instance, will continue to divide several people.
Right.
Some people give their reasoning as to, I want to know the safety of my child at every point in time. Some people are like, no matter what happens, I don't want my child having a mobile phone. And should my child have a mobile phone for basic means to communicate,
right,
it will not be an internet-enabled phone. Now, that saves the child to a very large extent, because most of the issues that are perpetrated in the digital space, we find out that often is at the instance of going online itself. And sadly, the numbers are increasing across the world. And it cuts across different perpetrators, from the religious angle to everyday people. Most times, abusers are known faces, are known people, are familiar people. And sadly, because we have not united in terms of creating safety nets,
right.
And when it concerns particular age limits, you still see children break through those ranks. There are many homes where parents will say, we have parental guidance.
Right.
We check their history. Many of these things can actually be circumvented by these kids. So it's often usually great that once the family is united from the home front and the child goes to school, the school speaks the same language. A majority of the classmates also agree with the same value system.
Okay.
They go to church or mosque. They are all agreed. The neighborhood where the kids live, they're all agreed. It's easier for us to unite together as a team,
right,
to reduce it, because unfortunately
we might not be able to end it totally.
We might never be able to end it, and the numbers continue to go up. Boys, like you rightly mentioned, as well as girls, and we see that both genders are either themselves survivors or perpetrators.
Right.
And it even plays out differently for persons with disability in our own case, because unfortunately there's a sense of a hunger to want to feel like I want to belong to this particular discourse. And because they want to belong to this particular discourse, at the slightest of opportunity or conversations, they're jumping at it. And sadly, we see that PWDs themselves are also at the end of being abused and themselves being abusers, which is very interesting as cases.
Right, we need to take a little short break for a little bit of housekeeping, and we'll be right back. conversation here on Lagos Television. Of course, we still have our guest, Adenike Oyetunde Lawal, the GM of LASODA, in the studio this morning. And we're taking a look at the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And before we went on that break, of course, she was through with her thought on how apt the theme for this year is. Ajibola, your question.
All right, still talking about the theme for this year's celebration. In this age and time, where most of the things that we do is driven by technology, how careful should one be on and offline in such a way that one will not be exposed to any kind of abuse on and offline?
So the simple answer would be to say we have to be extremely careful. And that cuts across the earliest of user and the oldest of user. I'll start with the oldest users. I realize that oftentimes, though not gender-based violence, but even abuse of sorts, we find many of our older parents be the victims of some form of cyberbullying and cybercrime, clearing out their accounts. It's not gender-based violence, but because we haven't protected them enough. And when you come to the younger people, you realize that even the psychology of conversations, people don't know themselves, they are promoting violence of sorts. This day and age where, differences of opinion from political stands to religious beliefs, at the slightest of provocation, you see people promoting violence, and they themselves don't even realize. And for some persons like me, when I'm reading, I'm like, I don't think this person understands the gravity of what they are saying. Is why Oxford University can say the word for the year is rage bait, because we are living in an era where there's so much rage, and we see that people are mounting pressure to doing, just capitalizing on it. So every single person must be extremely careful. I watch documentaries a lot, and unfortunately I did follow the R. Kelly story, and I remember one of the survivors, herself an established lawyer, and a lot of it started with her mobile device, and before she knew, she was neck deep in that whole cesspool of abuse for many years. And in the documentary, they had to take her to one of his homes where he had held her captive. And I remember her struggle to enter the room and say to the interviewers and the documentary people, I know that I'm an adult and people would wonder how someone in her 30s fell for this, but I did fall. And it all started with a mobile phone. So we must all be careful in how we protect ourselves, even how we protect abusers. Because sometimes people think that perpetrating the violence is just what this conversation is about. A lot of the times it's also the people who protect these abusers. And I see that it cuts across both the men and the women protect them. We know so many stories here where you see wives, mothers, children supporting the perpetrators, even to the extent of sounding illogical. So without a doubt, we must understand that in 2025, we have to protect ourselves about our social, our online presence, and most especially offline. The offline bit of it is even more dangerous, because when you meet people online, it starts casually. They are friends. They form a cordiality. I made so many friends online, I remember now. And, interestingly enough, I'm just remembering, I went somewhere and it so happens that the person was living in the same area. So me, joyful, excitedly, my friend stays in this area, let me go. Before I knew, he was coming on me to give me a peck. I remember that the door was open and that was my saving grace. And that was how I escaped.
Were you alone?
I was alone. So, and the interesting thing is, we had my friend and I, who lived in the same area, whose house I was going to, had seen me to his church, because he told me it was a church service. So my friend followed me to the church. Okay, let me show you my house. So I told my friend, okay, he lives 2 streets away from you. I'll come in another. In fact, I mentioned 30 minutes. I was naive. I was trusting. And I'm so glad till tomorrow that he must have forgotten to lock the door. The conversation started from the online space, and who knows what we'll be talking about today if that door wasn't locked, because he most definitely would have been able to maneuver me and overpower me physically. So again, the translating from meeting online into the physical space is where a lot of people have found themselves, and unfortunately we feel like it's only women who on the end of this many men are here as well,
Right.
and we must protect both genders and speak accurately and adequately like we're doing now.
Right, so just a bit, let's get off the theme and look at, of course, the celebration year in, year out has been going on, and one would have thought that by now we should have gotten across to everyone that needs to know this awareness, and then the numbers are rising. And the numbers should actually be decreasing if we're actually getting into the minds, into the hearts of the people we should be talking to. So what exactly are we not doing enough at this particular point in time?
So in my observation and opinion, I don't think that we're having candid conversations. And like you rightly painted, it feels like there's so many efforts. But again, we have people who are supporters. And I believe strongly that they are one of the categories of or group of persons who are making this effort amount to nothing.
Okay.
Every single day you see someone talk about, like, very simple example, marital rape, for instance. People don't believe that there's anything called marital rape.
Even the police, even sometimes you hear, you have to go and settle it at home.
So guess what? When those conversations are had, like in that instance, in numbers, you can see people's track record on social media. You can see their digital footprint, and you can know what people think and what their thought processes are. And you can determine to a very large extent, this person doesn't believe in certain things. Stay clear of them. There are people in the discourse as well online who are very popular, very loquacious. At every subject matter that exists, they have an opinion. So Yoruba say, one Aaron Fede, people love them. So they garner and they attract a lot of people.
Influencers.
Exactly. And in that process, they attract many, many sorts of persons. Sometimes, unfortunately, even these men and women don't know that they're throwing themselves on these people, and it becomes a supposed stance as to what the person was the one, promoting it, or the person was the one throwing it at me. When in actual fact, you should know where to cross the line.
Right.
And because of these instances, you see that though we are putting more money into it, though it seems like there's awareness, we are still where we are. Another very big part is misogyny and patriarchy. We cannot talk about this conversation without talking about it. We also cannot overemphasize the role that the family plays. The family, like we know in social studies, is the first agent of socialization.
Right.
So when we are watching a movie or seeing a skit on social media, and you are chuckling, and your father passes by and says, "What are you watching?" And you show to him, and he goes, "That is just wrong. You shouldn't laugh about this. Do you know what this person is promoting rape?" And you are here making, laughing, and you check the comments, you see that people have thousands of comments, and you're wondering, but we are putting so much effort. Why does it feel like more people? It's because the subject matter is also equally downplayed. Another thing is discrimination. Unfortunately, people who have to survive these instances cannot come out publicly to talk about their experiences. Because of fear of, they will judge me and this and that. One auntie from the village, when you want to marry, so is this not the girl we saw that, or is this not the boy that? Because of that, people don't have first-hand experience from people as to how they got to the point where they got to and what saved them exactly. So I don't think we can overemphasize the need for us to continue the awareness. But in my opinion, I think what we need to now do is to distill it into what a different pockets of population can relate with.
So it should not be a one-size-fits-all thing.
Primary school, find a way to have this conversation, which is why they always talk about with children now. You call the sexual organs like the names that they are.
Right.
You know, in secondary school, you also expose them to what the true state. You tell them, I know these are the things that are going on, so don't act like I'm living in the sky.
True.
And for adults as well, we need to come to the table and have conversations where we are telling ourselves this is wrong. We go for comedy shows, for instance, and they are making jokes, and you are like, this is just wrong. There was a popular one a few years ago. I sat in the audience and I was cringing throughout. By the next day, before you knew, the international organization that the person was working with had put out a statement to say, our attention has been drawn to this joke that was made. It's not business as usual, but it's also the pace sometimes feels like we're making progress and we're declining, but we must continue to just engage and maintain momentum.
Okay, let me make reference to what Abimbola mentioned earlier. People not coming out to speak up because of the stigma of the society. So if things should continue this way, what are the likely dangers that we are possibly going to face as a society? I was at a particular local government one day, and something similar to what you narrated to us here happened. And, you know, community leaders met and they were like, no, let's make it an home affair. You know, can you imagine how people will be looking at your daughter because of what have happened? People speaking up is still a bit low.
Yeah.
And then, so what are the dangers that we are likely to face as a society if we continue this path?
If we continue this path, we'll raise a generation of boys and girls who see abuse as normal, who do not know how to identify the indices that stare them in the face. You know, on social media, they say the red flags. They see the red flags, but they cannot identify it because we have normalized it. There's also the part where, over time, trauma becomes the norm of the day. Becomes everybody is so trauma functioning, high functioning depression, it becomes the order of the day because people have not been able to process what has happened, where they are, and how whole they need to be. And in turn, what that then does is the society is in a huge chaotic space. For me, I believe strongly that, you know, following through from all that I have said, we must also speak emphatically to the authorities, and we are the authorities here. What we're doing, we're in authoritative spaces. I'm very, very strong on religious institution and community leaders, like you rightly mentioned. At the Agency for Disability Affairs, we've heard of stories where we want to act. And like you rightly mentioned, so who will take care of the children? This person is the primary breadwinner. So why did you come here in the first instance?
If you
were
didn't want
coming
justice,
to government,
right.
so it meant that you must have supposedly calculated that I'm going to government, so it means government is going to step in. But the realities are different. When the person goes back and the person realizes, I am a dependent, this person is my primary caregiver. So what do? I love what DSVA is doing. They empower these people now and don't allow them exit the spaces almost immediately so their lives are not in danger, especially for those who are not physically assaulted. For those that are physically assaulted, no matter the grammar you speak to Lola and her team, they are getting you out of that space almost immediately. For those who are not physically assaulted, they empower you. They ask you how discreet you can be. If we train you for so and so, can you learn a skill? If you go to, when you are equipped enough to exit that arrangement, you exit the space. Otherwise, the landlord will persuade you not to report. Your mother will persuade you not to report. Your father will say, keep quiet. What do you mean? And your pastor, your siblings, and it is from both ends of the spectrum. We have seen the ones where the guys are themselves the survivors, and we've seen the ones where the women are survivors. And I realize that it plays out completely the same way. Conversations like this, I have also come to terms with the fact that it actually spurs them into thinking. Somebody happenstance, they're stopping at maybe at the salon making their hair and they're watching us now. Persons, this is what is going on with me. First and foremost, you need to plan an exit. Sometimes exiting easily is not as easy. In Lagos, you can't go and stand on the road. It's unsafe as well. So, and government is not encouraging that. So you need to plan an exit. If it's to get into school, if it's to learn a trade, if you have a cousin or an auntie that lives out of state, that you can go to, your auntie lives in maybe Kaduna, that you can move into her space. You don't have to even tell her why you are running away. Before you know, they start, unfortunately for those who it is their parents who you know, spurred this abuse of sorts, is slightly more complex. But oftentimes, because we're talking about the digital space, it starts with how much exposure we are willing to admit we have gotten and what parameters we are sure we can set in place.
Let's talk about people living with disability in Lagos, and especially also how they're coping within this space. Would you say that at this moment, are we including them enough in conversations around gender-based violence or assault? If we're not, what are some of those things that we intend to take out, especially moving forward, and also ensuring that at the national level, the global space where issues around gender-based violence are also top burner, how do we begin to ensure that these things are also cascaded to people living with disabilities?
So there are certain words that are buzzwords. Gender-based violence, unfortunately, happens to be one, as well as inclusion. And it so happens that December 3rd every year since 1994 has been set aside by the United Nations to celebrate the International Day for Persons with Disabilities. And this year's theme is fostering a disability inclusive society, and there's a word there that says advancing social progress. Social progress is where we must agree first and foremost we have to get to. And for persons with disabilities that span different sorts of disabilities, it's a completely different construct. Just like we rightly agreed about gender-based violence, even persons with disabilities is slightly more complex, where the persons perpetrating the abuse in this instance are their primary caregivers. So where are you going to? You are profoundly disabled. You can't live without a wheelchair. The person that you know, and it starts from the littlest of things. You know, the way you're uncomfortable, how your caregiver is scrubbing your back,
touching you,
and you can't voice out because you have in the last 2 years struggled to get a caregiver to stay.
And you finally got one.
And you finally now get this one that everybody believes and sees that is excellent on the job. So what do? It's really difficult. I must be very candid with you. And because it's difficult, until the narrative changes again in that person's day-to-day living, there is so much that government can do. How many facilities will the government establish to create as shelters? What is the plan to exit those places? And you know that with social protection, for instance, the ideal prospect is that the register would change. But in our reality, there's a semblance of permanency on the register. People want to be on the register for
forever.
As long, when in places where we have looked at and we want to seemingly adapt to us, on the register you are there so that over time your economic reality changes, you
and
exit.
then we can go back into the society.
People just want to stay there. So DSVA and LASODA have created somewhat of like a channel where we know that we have to cater for persons with disability who fall into this category. The reportage is really low, but it has started. Again, assurances of you are safe. And now in instance, we always have to create shelters for them because you have to get, most times you have to get them out of those spaces. Most times. And to get a person out of that space is a lot of work to deal with their minds.
Right.
So even if you get the person physically out of the space, the next question is, what can you do? What are you able to do? Right. So if we force you to learn a skill today, and we say, okay, learn this skill, we will provide the markets for you. Many a times you find out that it takes them much longer because, again, disability. If we're dealing with a person who has neurological or intellectual disabilities, we have to, if the training or skill learn acquisition should take 6 months, it may take 18 months. So we now have a constraint of funds, a constraint of the manpower. Is why these conversations have to be had across board. The church has to support. The family has to support. Really,
it's not a government thing, just alone.
Government cannot do it in its entirety. The social register I painted for you, Lagos has one of the highest numbers, well, maybe alongside the federal. And you will see that these are the lowest of the lowest hanging fruits. And PWDs happen to also be there somewhere. But the narrative is changing, thankfully, slowly. So what we've been able to do is to also increase the kinds of, I don't want to say empowerment, but the kinds of new realities we're giving to PWDs. We're equipping them with work tools, we're equipping them with skills that they can learn and have a market for. So one thing to learn a skill is one thing for it to be marketable. Right. And then when you have a market, it's also one thing for you to find people who are willing to part with and the quality of what it is you're offering. Right. So we will always tell them that the competition out there is very keen. So if you are doing maybe pastries, it must be so good that if anybody tastes this, they are coming back no matter who they've always patronized, they have to come back. And it's really we're taking it one step at a time, and let's see how it goes.
Okay, still talking about PWDs. I've seen people body shame people with disabilities on and offline, and sometimes when some of them are lucky enough to see somebody that will marry them, families of their husband or wives, they body shame them, use derogatory words for them. For those who might be going through such, what are the channels available for them to at least come out of that psychological torture? And are there laws in place in Lagos State actually protecting these people?
So there are laws. Lagos State started the law first across the country, and there's a special people's law. We're really hopeful that we can actually review that next year. There's also a national law as well, and the terms are very, very well spelled out there. Discrimination of any sort is not allowed. One thing that is very important for me to mention at this point is community. If you're a PWD, you cannot afford to live in isolation. So the psychology of a person with disabilities, I'm not wanted, the average psychology, I'm not wanted, God has done this to me, must have been something. So there's a part where there's a seclusion. And my faith, I'm Christian, my faith explains to me very clearly, when the devil wants to finish you, he would isolate you. And you will stay there and think that the entirety of the world's issues are on your shoulders. Get into community. There are thriving communities in Lagos State with different forms of disabilities for different persons with different kinds of disabilities. I noticed that what that does for the psyche is, in the list, it encourages them to come out. Okay. So in the list, and what, I see that it helps them, it improves their psychology. When they start to see other persons like themselves, not even necessarily a comparative analysis of, I'm profoundly disabled and this person is mildly disabled. The first word is this: we are both persons with disability. What it does is that it exposes them to an array of possibilities. There are PWDs in Lagos who are great earners, who are themselves employers of labor in the tens and hundreds of people, because they have, through their own decision, said this disability is not going to keep me there. With body shaming, what I've come to terms with realizing is, a lot of the times you must admit and accept that it is not about you. It's often about the other person, who doesn't understand what it is they're saying, who doesn't understand what it is they're doing. And sadly, you cannot own up for what it is you have no control over. That a person is body shaming me, for instance, that I have one leg, I don't care. I don't see you, I don't care.
But how many people have such confidence?
The problem about it is, again, community. When I talk about community, I'm very deliberate. It's not even a physical community. The home you are from, they don't speak positive. It's okay. You find a way. There's something we do as human beings. You can lock out what people are saying. You can. When you get into your community, whether it's your friend online, whether it's your friend in the classroom, it's your friend at the mosque, it's your friend in school, it's your friend at the church, it helps your psychology. I always tell people that by nature I am positive, and then my faith just really helped me. And I came from a home where the first person to affirm me was my father. So I didn't need public validation. Right. I honestly didn't need any man to tell me I was beautiful, because the first person that told me, and I remember like yesterday, was my dad. So I would always love to hear my father say that. And for Christians, it cannot compare, but it's just like a similitude of the love of God. And it is so overwhelming. So I always tell people that you cannot function out of your psychology. Yes, your mother keeps talking negative to you. The person you're marrying is talking negative to you. What are you doing to yourself? What you tell yourself, I promise you, supersedes anything. Sometimes it feels like it's insanity. Right. Like, just keep telling yourself what you know is what your reality is. There are people on wheelchair who have had all the indices that the world marks as successes. And I would often say, the world marks, you went to school, I finished school. You did your NYC, I finished the NYC. I got a job. I started to drive. All those indices that the world, I got it. I'm married, I have kids. So the indices that the world has set as these things are not achievable, or these are the things that
achieved everything.
And I have not even begun, which is the most important part of it. And for people who know me, they know that those things, yes, they add color to my life, but they are not the coloration of who it is, and the strength of who I am is because I know whose I am. And that is what summarizes it for me. Yeah.
Before we wrap up this conversation this morning, let's quickly also talk about, are we there yet, or do we still need to advocate for more training for social workers, police officers, who oftentimes also need to interact with people with disabilities when they report cases of violation, be it sexual, be it domestic? If we're not there yet, what are some of those things that you wish, like yesterday, we can equip these individuals with?
I'm sure you know that.
Because you're chuckling already, like, okay.
I'm sure you know that we are not there yet. One of my biggest dreams, honestly speaking, to start with at the police command is to have a disability unit. Okay. I don't even want a desk. I want a unit.
It's a proper unit.
And I see that what that does is it helps to reorientate people. The language that we use, the terminologies that we use, it starts from how we interact with PWDs. There was a time that identifying a person with maybe intellectual disability and saying that they are imbeciles was accurate. You dare not say it. It's why the US president is under fire for calling somebody retarded in 2025. So the terminologies are important, and I've noticed from experience that when we have these people in institutions, our job becomes easier. Without a doubt, first and foremost, we have a huge dearth of social workers across the board, local, state, and federal. And we might attribute it to several things. People are leaving, nobody's interested in social work. In fact, I don't recall the last time someone told me that they gained an admission to study
social work.
Why? Because there's been an experience or picturing of how they are the bottom barrel. They don't earn so much. When in actual fact, social workers make the engine of a country move. In crimes that we call developed, you see that social workers are the engine. My friend just went abroad to study social work, and the kind of conversations we have, my mind is blown. So without a doubt, not only do we need more social workers, we need to reorientate. The curriculum must be revamped. Even from those who study architecture, engineering, because again, it's okay to put it on paper. This is a simplified copy of the Lagos State Special People's Law, for instance. In the big one and in the national one, it is there, all buildings, we have about 5 or 6 agencies in Lagos State are in the built space. But guess what? It starts from, what are you teaching them? What are you teaching them? When a person tells you they want to build this, you need to factor this into this. You need to do this. And then once they start to insist, the person who is giving them the contract has no choice but to listen. But what we find from experience is the person with his big money, so what do you mean? I'm the one paying you. What do you mean we need to do this? Even when approvals are gotten, ideally, because on paper you have put it that your property will fit. And then we're monitoring, and then you are looking for who knows Governor Sanwo-Olu to call to say, there are some people looking for my trouble. We have multifaceted concerns. So away from social work, we as a people need to reorientate ourselves. I always tell people that disability is not a front burner conversation because people themselves, their parents have not landed on the wheelchair. When it becomes, my sister had an accident. I don't have a sister, so she can't have accidents. You see that I have people from my past who have called me or reached out to me on social media to say, I knew you in university and I never paid attention to it, but my mom has recently been bound to a wheelchair and we had to fly her abroad. And you were the first person that came to my mind and said, I'm sorry, we never paid attention. So we must reorientate ourselves. The language we speak, the opportunities that we provide, because the rights of PWDs are not grandiose. They are simple, they are basic, and they are achievable rights as the case is. So I guess that we'll continue to work better. I know that Governor Sanwo-Olu also has a soft spot for PWDs, and our hope is that we'll continue to have the political will backing us with the many things that we intend to do and achieve beyond 2026, and for a Lagos that is truly inclusive.
All right, before we allow you go, I'm sure you have a program tomorrow commemorating the IWD. So what do you have on ground, and how do you also intend to follow up the conversations after tomorrow? Because we have a penchant for celebrating days, and after the day has come and gone, we recline to our shell and then we continue like it was before. So what are you doing tomorrow, and how do you intend to extend the conversations after tomorrow?
So tomorrow we will be having an auditorium of a few hundreds of PWDs that we have invited from across the clusters in Lagos State. Individuals who are not members of clusters, and a few other stakeholders. And like I rightly mentioned earlier, the theme for tomorrow's celebration is fostering an inclusive society through social progress. We'll also be hearing from the PWDs themselves at a question and answer segment. We have some, high-level stakeholders who will be in attendance, because when we speak sometimes in the rooms where these things matter, it only buttresses it when they hear directly from them, and that is why they're also coming. And we'll be touching across key themes from the Theme Plus agenda, so that we can know exactly where we are and what we ought to do. Personally, I'm not a talk and not do. And our hope is, one thing that we have been very transparent with the general public at every opportunity we get, is we cannot do it alone. So the takeouts from tomorrow, we will find ways to modify. I must also give kudos to quite a number of MDAs in Lagos State who are themselves now saying, truly, we have not been doing so and so, but we are now doing this. If you follow us on our social media platforms, you will see that we've also been very gracious in, doing courtesy visits, and just to reorientate many MDAs to say, this is who you are, this is who we are, and this is what you're supposed to do for us. Okay. And we are very positive. What has happened in the last almost 2 years since I became the GM in Lagos State has not happened, and I say it to my full chest, and I take it with a lot of work that we have put. The entire team has put in a lot of work. But that would not be possible without the political will and support of both Mr. Governor, Mr. Deputy Governor, and all the other key ESCO members that matter in this discourse. So we are positive that come 2026, December 2nd, when we're talking again, we'll be able to show you that this is where we were and this is where we've gotten to in 1 year.
Right.
I like your confidence.
I know.
Yes, I know, and your positivity definitely is contagious. Thank you so much, Adeniko Yetunde Lawal, General Manager, Lagos State Office for Disability Affairs, for finding time to be with us on the conversation this morning. We wish you the very best.
Thank you.
All right, we've been speaking with our guest this morning, and of course, she's taking us through, some of the things that the office intends to achieve. And of course, we will hold out God's grace by next year, December 2nd, 2026. Hopefully, we'll sit together again and take a review of what we've said today and how far that office is achieved in a year. Thank you so much for watching this side of the table. We'll take a quick break. When we return, Adebimpe will be here with her Lagos conversation.